It's Friday night, everybody. You know what that means. It's Friday night. Let's have some fun. Let's get together and play a ton.
Hi, I'm Matt.
And I'm Jon.
And we're
Friday Night Games.
We want to immerse you into our love of the hobby by educating and entertaining you through our board gaming adventures. Our podcast lands every Friday, and we create content for Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube.
This episode is sponsored by TabletopRenaissance.ca, located in our hometown of Windsor, Ontario, Canada. They just launched their web store, so go check out TabletopRenaissance.ca for your board game and tabletop miniature needs. In this episode, we're going to dive into board game expansions. We will discuss if they are needed and how many is too many.
So, Jon, why did you want to talk about board game expansions?
You know what? We've never talked about Everdell, I don't think, on our podcast.
Really?
And you know how much I love this game.
Yeah, you've owned it for almost year and
a half-ish, yeah. So I chose the topic because, Everdell is one of my favorite games. It just finished its final Kickstarter campaign, and Everdell's just been a game that my wife and I really connected with each other over the board game hobby. In case you didn't know, Everdell is a dynamic worker placement tableau building game. You are trying to build one of the best cities using the cards you acquire in the game by paying resources that your workers are getting during each season. It's a beautiful game designed by James A. Wilson with amazing artwork by Andrew Bosley. The table presence is amazing. There's a beautiful 3D, what they call the Ever Tree, that sticks out, and the expansions just add so much to the board. It's a giant game. So at the beginning of our first lockdown, I snagged the first expansion that came out, Pearlbrook, and I just was hooked. I needed to get this complete game because I just had missed the campaign for the follow-up expansions, Belfair and Spirecrest. So there was I had to wait for it to come to retail, but as soon as it landed, I went to our local game store, snagged them both, and I loved what those added to the game. And then I got word that another 2 expansions were coming out this year, New Leaf and Mistwood, on Kickstarter. So I went and grabbed those, and then I got some add-ons and stuff that I'm excited for. But however, this is the final expansion for this game because the creators felt that it was time. And honestly, the campaign made over $6 million. And
wow.
Whew, so this game that makes the game of 5 expansion plus upgrade components and stuff like that.
Okay, let's dive into Everdell for a second. I've only played it once with you about a year and a half ago. How do we play the game again? Do you remember? I mean,
yeah.
Just explain to me to refresh my mind.
So the game is played over 3 seasons. So you have fall, summer. Sorry, how do seasons work? Spring, summer, and fall.
March, July, August, and November.
Yes. So each season, you get a set of workers that go and collect resources for you, and those resources are used to purchase cards to build your city. The point of the game is you're trying to build a city of 15 cards that has constructions and critters and stuff like that. And then based on what you play, you can earn bonus points for the extra stuff that is available for points. So when you play a card to populate your city, and those might get you more resources or score points, give you abilities. It's really a good hand management. Some cards interact with each other, so you want to make sure that you can lay those cards down so you kind of gain the most out of what's available to you. And then when you're out of resources, out of workers, you prepare for the next season. So you call all your workers back, and then you get more workers as you go through the seasons. The summer seems to be the longest, where you can kind of do the most because you get 2 pairs of workers. And that's about it in a nutshell.
It's all coming back to me now. And I thought one of the cool mechanics is that as you play cards, they give you special abilities or extra spots to place your workers that gain you more and more. So as the game progresses over the 3 seasons, by season 3, it's not only longer because you have more workers, it's longer because your town is creating more things as you play your workers.
Right. And what I think is really cool about the game too is that even though you're playing against your opponents, you're kind of playing your own game. So right. I can be in a totally different season than you are on your turns, depending on what I'm doing.
Right, because you're in a different part of the world than me in this game. Yeah. No, I don't know. I'm just kidding. But yeah, no, that's... No, I think this concept's cool. You play at your own pace, and then once you finish off, I think it ends like when you're done, and then everyone has to finish. Correct? I don't think it just stops. Like, how does the game end?
Once you can't do anything else on your last season.
So you could finish, several turns ahead of me,
right?
And then I just play out the rest of my turns. I think that's also a very cool thing too.
Yeah, I mean it's a big game, so that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Right, and it is. I think it is for everybody. I think everyone should play it. It's an amazing game. If you haven't played it, you should pick it up. It's definitely available now, so you definitely should. You would be able to pick it up, and you should go pick it up if you have never played it. Okay, so now that we've discussed that, and you refresh my memory. Okay, so how many expansions did you say there were? You said there was.
There's 5.
So there's Pearlbrook, Belfair, Spirecrest, New Leaf, and Mistwood. Am I right?
You're correct, sir.
Okay, so let's go through those. What does Pearlbrook add?
So Pearlbrook was the first expansion.
Oh, it's not Pearlbrook. It's Pearlbrook.
Pearlbrook,
I keep
yes.
saying Pearlbrook.
Pearlbrook, yes. It introduces a sideboard to the original game board, so like an extra piece of the board there. It gives you frog ambassadors, so basically it's another worker, and only those workers can navigate through Pearlbrook. They're there to gather a new resource, which is pearls, which allow you to meet aquatic creatures and build like kind of like underwater constructions. Pearls are actually really tough to acquire, so you have to really manage it properly, but they give you like a ton of points in the end game, and then there's other like bonus points you can get if you do certain things along the game as well.
Okay, what about Belfair?
Belfair was one that I wasn't like super excited for, but when I got it, I was actually like pretty happy that I didn't ignore it. So it gives the game rules for 5 to 6 players. It also gives player powers and kind of a place to house your resources, just like a resource board. Mm-hmm. So the player power is really cool. It just gives like, you kind of pick a critter and they let you do certain things on your turn that you normally wouldn't be able to do. Has a market location. I think you can purchase like extra things for points. And then there's things called Garland Awards, which are shared end game goals.
Okay.
And then you kind of when you play Belfair, you kind of choose what you want to use, so you don't have to use everything as well. And it eliminates the use of the tree as well. You can put like the cards in the middle, but the tree is a nice thing to look at, so I keep it up.
Oh, that makes sense, because so the game is originally for 1 to 4 players, I think, correct?
1 to 4 players, yeah.
Right. So I guess that kind of makes sense. The more players you have, the tree, which if you didn't know is like this 3D built out of cardboard tree that you put extra items and workers and seasons on. I guess it would make sense to move that if you had more players, so it's easily reachable.
Right.
I guess that makes a lot of sense to me. Okay, and you know what my next question is? So go through Spirecrest. What does that add?
So this is probably my favorite expansion of the 3 that are available right now.
Whoa, okay.
So it adds another layer to the game board, and it offers more workers. So these rabbits that move through the Spirecrest region. It also offers like big critters, so like they're bigger meeples that your workers can ride on that give helpful abilities in the game. But what's really cool is there's weather cards, so each season you flip a weather card and it does something negative to the game, so it kind of like takes abilities away from you, and it's kind of just like a hindrance to that season. So it's pretty cool.
All right. And like what is you said the bigger meeples give like a bonus. What type of bonus?
It's just like player powers for the things. I don't know like directly offhand.
Okay.
But they're just like, they might be able to, I think one is like, I think if you have the bear, you get more berries.
Ooh.
As resources and stuff like that.
Berries, get it? More
berries, yes.
Wow, that's a punny joke right there that neither of us laughed at. So sweet. Okay, now let's dive into the 2 new ones that were kickstarted. I don't know how much you know about this, but if you don't, we could look it up, I guess.
There's not a ton of information on them. I know when they were releasing stuff to content creators, it was just basically a couple of the new cards that were in play, and that's it. So they didn't really get to see what the new boards or anything looked like. But New Leaf adds like a train station to the right side of the board.
A train station?
Yeah. And there's new critters, constructions, and there's like new events and cards to draw visitors to your city.
Ooh.
So I assume like the more visitors you get, the more kind of points you'd probably get at the end of the game. So I'm excited to see what that adds.
Okay, what about Mistwood?
So in Mistwood, it makes the game kind of like a new game for 1 to 2 players, which is kind of cool. Mm-hmm. And then it brings out a new villain called Nightweave who wants to take over Everdell, and she is a big spider
with a top hat. That's
with a top hat. Yes. So you have to like recruit heroes that will help transform your farms and stuff like that. But what's cool about this, in the base game, there is a character in like the lore of Everdell called Rugwort, who is like kind of like a rat king evil guy who, when you play solo, that's who you're trying to beat in the game. So it's pretty cool. So I'm glad that there's kind of like another villain in the story. So I'm interested to see what these 2 expansions add to the base game. You know, they say they don't recommend playing all of the expansions together because it's a lot. And
pieces,
I did play like Pearlbrook, Spirecrest, and Belfair all at once, and it was a lot to manage. So I don't know if you get like the full, I don't know if you get like a sweet experience with it, but yeah, that's Everdell in a nutshell.
You missed one.
What did I miss?
Yeah, it's not really an expansion. It's the big box of storage.
Oh yeah, no, that's
really
just what I added to my pledge so that I can just put it on the shelf.
Yeah. Okay, let's just analyze this for a second. So the game itself is what, $60 or something, or is it more?
I think it was like $80 Canadian. Yeah.
Okay, so the game itself is 60. It's like $70. So after tax, you're hitting 80, right? Now, okay, so the expansions, Pearlbrook is 50, Spirecrest is 50, New Leaf is 60, Belfair is 40, and Mistwood is 60. Wow. Okay, so that is a lot of money. That is a lot of money, right? That's like 200, 300, 100.
Don't tell me how much I spent on this thing, man.
You just want to spend your money and not think about it, eh? And here I am like putting like dollar signs to it.
Listen, I got the big box of storage to put everything in the box.
Even more expensive.
I got the upgraded tree so that the tree's now made of wood.
You know how much pizza we could buy with that?
Yeah,
we could make Everdell out of pizza.
It's so good.
Yeah, true. Okay, that's a lot, but okay, so that's cool. I kind of like the idea behind Mistwood. It actually is the one that kind of really gets at me because I play a lot of my games solo, right? So if I were to ever get Everdell, I probably would skip everything and just get Mistwood, to be honest. Okay, well that's
all right.
Cool. Which expansion do you think do you need? Does a person who bought Everdell and they're like, man, I love this game, I need to get another expansion, what do you think they should get? Like, what would you recommend? Let's give a kind of a conclusion to our listeners here. So if they're thinking about Everdell and we just convinced them to go out and buy it, what would they look forward to in an expansion? Like, which one would be their favorite?
I mean, it depends if you're a completionist or not. I think out of the ones that I have, the one that offers the least is probably Belfair.
Well, let's have a big group of people, right? Because then it ups it to 5 and 6.
Yeah. So, but I think out of the 3 expansions I have, Pearlbrook's probably like the mehest of them all.
Okay.
I think Spirecrest should just be part of the base game.
Why did you think Pearlbrook was meh? Because you feel like you're adding on a whole nother part of the game that doesn't necessarily have to be there, while Belfair and Spirecrest interact with the game itself? Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, probably. Like I said, it's like a water board. Only the Frog Ambassador can go there. The pearls are like super expensive to get, or like it's very hard. The pearls aren't hard to get, but like the things, you need a lot of pearls to do stuff, and it's just like it's hard to get it all done. And especially for like the events and stuff like that where you get points, it's just like it's a lot to do.
So because Pearlbrook is like its own side game, you're like, well, it kind of detracts from the main game itself, so that's why it's the most meh to you.
Yeah.
Okay. Just trying to get at it.
Yeah. No worries. Yeah, that's just what it is. It's just like you're doing a lot, and I think for like little payoff. But I think what the other 2 expansions that I have add is worth it, especially like the player powers from Belfair. Especially because resources are actually pretty difficult to get because you have a finite amount of workers, right? So you really have to work on the comboing of your cards to get more resources, and
which is the luck of them being flipped over, right?
Exactly.
So what the player power gives you, you're saying with the player power, you're getting this extra ability that helps you speed up the game, basically.
Right. And then like I said with Spirecrest, I really dig the like weather cards, so the stuff that hinders the game and the gameplay. So like you can't collect berries, or you can't go to this location. So it makes the game a little bit harder, especially if you're trying to strategize using certain locations and you're like, well, I can't go there this time. And then the other 2 I haven't played, so I don't know.
Right. Okay. So in my mind, this is what I got out of it, right? So Pearlbrook is like an extra thing when you get bored with the game. It's not the greatest, but it adds another element that you can play with, and it kind of detracts from the main game. Belfair is a must. I would say that you kind of sold Belfair as almost a must. I think it's a must if you want more people, right?
Yep.
You want a faster game, it's a must. If you have over 4 people, then it's a must. Spirecrest, you're kind of telling me that the weather is one of the best components, like how it affects the game. So if you kind of are bored with the main game, Spirecrest is going to add a little bit of change, right? And then obviously we don't know anything about New Leaf, other than it's another game. But Mistwood, I mean, I don't need to play it to know that it seems like it's a very solo game, right? So if you're a player who plays a lot of solo, then Mistwood would almost be a must for you.
Right.
That's what that kind of tells me. So it's kind of neat that all their expansions add these little different things, I guess. Like, other than Pearlbrook being a meh. It's cool that like Mistwood, Belfair, and Spirecrest are actually like, hey, this is like transform your game into how you play it, right?
Right.
Like that's kind of neat. And actually, now that I think about it, the player powers make sense because if you have 5 or 6 players, the game's gonna be a lot longer. So player powers would speed it up.
Yes.
But you're telling me it speeds up the main game anyway, so that's also good.
Yeah, it was cool to play. Yeah, I usually just play Everdell 2 player, so I mean it was fine having player powers as well. So
okay, so if you were to drop an expansion, which one would you drop?
Probably Pearlbrook.
All right, and if you had to like definitely could only buy one,
Spirecrest.
Bam! There you go, listeners. John has said it. Spirecrest is the have to have, and Pearlbrook is the drop. I actually think Belfair would be my go-to, or Mistwood, because even though I haven't played either of them, I feel like speeding up the game is beneficial. And then playing solo is beneficial.
Yeah. Well, you can play the base game solo anyway.
Yeah, for sure. But I think like if you're a solo player, Mistwood would add more, more solo content. Right. It's pretty neat. Well, there you go. Okay, so would you say Everdell's better with the expansions, or do you think I don't know. Do you think that Everdell needs expansions?
I mean, the base game is great on its own, but I think the expansions just add a lot of value to the game, and it makes the game enjoyable and different every time you play it.
Okay. Yeah. Sweet. So there we go. We concluded on Everdell. I'm glad we got to talk about it, that you actually got to talk about your like favorite game. I think that's like, it is your favorite game, eh?
Yeah, it's been a while since I played it though, so I got to get back on the table.
Well, it's cool that like Britt will play with you.
Yeah.
So that's neat. Okay, so you asked me what my favorite game with expansions was, or a game that I play that has a lot of them, right? I think that's what you asked me. Something along those lines.
Yeah, I want to know if you think expansions in general are needed, and if you have any favorites as well. I would love to know.
Okay, so I actually wrote down 2 games that have expansions, and I wrote them down for different reasons. So the first one, okay, I'll say both of them, and then we'll talk about them. So the first one is Bargain Quest, and the second one is Marvel. It's really just any LCG, but specifically Marvel Champions and or Arkham Horror, the LCG, right? So, and you're laughing because you know exactly where I'm going to go with that. And I'm sure you as a listener is laughing because you know exactly where I'm going to go with that too. So Bargain Quest is, well, I guess I'll describe it. So it's a game where you're playing as a storekeep and you're fighting monsters and you're basically recruiting heroes, equipping them with items, taking their money, and then having them fight monsters. And the player who wins is basically the person with the most money at the end of the game. But you are trying to defeat the monsters too. That's kind of like a small little side thing. So the base game is good, but the black market expansion adds this sort of like black market feature. So first it adds a couple different more employees that are a little more seedy and a little more awesome, and then you kind of get more upgrade functions similar to display and storage upgrades, but they come at the cost of stars. And basically when you do things like that, you get, more cards or more cards to put down on your display to attract heroes and stuff like that. So it's pretty powerful. But I actually, I think you played with me, I think I played it with Bill, and I think we all had the same conclusion, is that when we played the base game, it was good, but once we added the black market expansion, it was almost like a necessity play.
Right.
Because it added a whole nother element to the game. Like, you're using a whole nother strategy to play. So it kind of added several strategies. So in my mind, I'm like, that game is good, but it became way better with the expansion. So it almost needed an expansion to become really good.
That's fair.
And then this second set of games, they're basically made to have expansions. You know what I mean? So Marvel Champions and Arkham Horror, the living card games, or LCGs, they have like so many expansions, and they just keep coming out with them. And you don't have to, you have to buy the base game, but then you don't have to buy every expansion. You could just buy whatever you want. But then they also release hero packs, and they release like extra side quests, or in Arkham Horror they'll have like, oh, you need to do this arc, and the arc is like, you have to buy like 7 things to play the arc. So there's a lot of cards, there's a lot of everything, and it's just like, wow, this is clearly made to print money, basically.
Right.
And one could argue that there's two forms of it. So first of all, I just want to say that I actually love both Marvel Champions and both Arkham Horror a lot. Like a real lot, enough for me to invest in a whole arc in Arkham Horror and for me to get more expansions for Marvel Champions. But it just seems like you spend a lot of money. You're going to just spend a lot of money. And it almost seems like, I don't know, there just seems like so much coming out that eventually I'm going to get sick of it. But then again, Arkham Horror is on its like 6th or 7th arc, so I don't know, people buy it up. And then there's also that kind of buyer's remorse where I'm like, I want to play all of it, but I don't have the time to play all of it, and it's very expensive.
Yeah,
to invest in Arkham Horror arc, you're talking like almost $200, dude. That's a lot, right?
That's a lot. Yeah. And
then like, Marvel Champions, the game itself was like $50. This is all in Canadian, by the way, to our listeners. So it's like $50-$60 for the base game, and then if you want to play 4 players, you got to buy like a whole nother base game, and you're like, oh, come on. But I will say, like, I love it, and one thing I love about Marvel Champions, specifically Marvel Champions, is that I could buy different Marvel decks. I don't have to buy everybody. Like, let's say I want to play Doctor Strange, I'm gonna go buy Doctor Strange. I don't have to buy everything. But man, there's so much, and it's so addicting and a ton of fun. But I think like those games have too many expansions, but at the same time they're also made to have too many expansions. And then Bargain Quest needed an expansion to be better.
Right. I mean, I think with like Marvel Champions, superheroes are very like special to people, right? So yeah, you get the base game, but hey, it doesn't have your favorite hero or whatever. And then like an expansion comes out, or the hero packs or whatever come out, they're going to buy, like I would buy that one, you know what I mean? Like, instead of buying every single one.
Right.
So I think for that, you wouldn't need all of them. I think you would just kind of pick and choose.
Yeah, but imagine it was Batman, John. You would buy all the Batman ones, right?
Yeah, probably.
So, and that's how they win, right? They win because you're going to buy them all. And so if you're a huge Marvel fan, you're going to buy all of them, right?
Right.
So they win. All right. So let's discuss if expansions are needed. What do you think? Do you have an opinion?
I think it depends if they're needed. I don't think every single board game ever created needs an expansion. Mm-hmm. So I think if you're coming out with expansions for the sake of coming out with an expansion, I mean, I don't really have an example of this, but actually, I do have an example. Games like on Kickstarter, for example, they're like, oh, kickstart this and get the expansion. Well, it's like, this is your first game. Like, why not just make that part of your base game anyway, right?
Oh, you're gonna like what I wrote, or you're gonna like my thoughts in a second. Yeah, go for it. Keep going.
So I think if you're gonna release an expansion just for the sake of like doing something extra, that it's kind of pointless. Just add it to your base game. Games that where the expansions add value, or they add extra players or stuff like that, or they further the storyline along, then yeah, sure, give me all the expansions you want. But at some point, I'm probably going to stop playing your game. There's a billion games out there.
I'm going to add to that. I guess like when you think about Arkham Horror, that is sort of like a storyline. So they're adding more games onto a storyline, and that's kind of a big difference. Right. So so you want to keep the storyline rolling. You're going to keep buying to see how it concludes. So I get that. Marvel Champions is not like that, though. There's not really a storyline. It's kind of like an arcadey thing. You jump in a story, you play it. Anyway, sorry. Just wanted to point that out, that I actually agree. I like that aspect of like, yeah, keep the story rolling. I really do like that.
Right. And I think if a game company releases an expansion for a game, like if there's a little bit of time that has elapsed between when the base game came out and this expansion, it's going to make me want to play that game again. Because like how often do we play games more than a handful of times?
Well, specifically us, yeah.
Right. Getting a game, like Everdell with all these expansions, each expansion, I bring the game back on my table to try it out. Mm-hmm. Right. So I like that aspect of it. So I think it puts the game on the table more for me. That's kind of where I stand. I don't know if I think they're needed in a way where it needs to, for me, it needs to, like I said, needs to add value. It needs to expand the story for me, and it needs to be enjoyable. It shouldn't just feel like you're adding something on just for the sake of it.
So that's interesting because that kind of rolls into my points a little bit. I didn't actually think about keeping the story going. I actually thought about keeping the money going.
Yeah, that too.
Because I was like, LCG and Arkham Horror, a lot of it is like, hey, we're going to make another expansion, and each like I said, every expansion is like $200 for Arkham Horror. Marvel Champions is, buy whatever you want, but you're still going to pay $50 for like a base expansion.
Right.
And in my mind, it's like, just keep the money rolling, as in like keep building this stuff. People will buy it. And why not break it up into small little pieces, and people will buy it and you'll make more money, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just small thought. But the other two main points was that marketing is one reason. And these are just my opinions. Like, I don't know. It's somewhat true with some games, but not true for all. So basically use it to sell more games. There are a lot of good games, and you're kind of hitting on this with Everdell, that might need a lot of small boosts to get their games out there. Everdell, I don't know how much, but you're right. Like, it does get the game back to the table. But for instance, What a Wonderful World, It's a Wonderful World.
Right.
So that game is a really cool, overlooked engine builder, and it's a really good game. But the one problem they have is that it's not really well known, right? So what do? They basically created an expansion to get it kind of back on your table, to kind of get it out there again. And that's kind of like, I feel like it's kind of sad because it's not being represented as much as some other games, and it's actually better than a lot of games.
Yeah, don't they have like another, I don't know if it's an expansion, but like,
yeah, they have
another
2 expansions, like a solo campaign thing, and then like extra expansion for the game, which is good. It's good. I own the game. I don't own the expansions, but I do like the fact that will come back to my table. But it's sad that they almost needed to do that to kind of get more credit to the game.
Maybe. I think, aren't they coming out with like 2, not expansions, but like games in the world of? They
are. Yeah. You're right. One is Knights or something. I don't remember what the other one was. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like they had to do that, right? Because the game wasn't selling as well as it could be, right? It's an amazing game,
right?
And it just isn't really, like, people just aren't into it. I don't know if their marketing's wrong. I have no idea. And then my other thought was that if you're like a small game company, you're gonna, and you kind of produce through Kickstarter, you're gonna want to hit another expansion to kind of get more people interested. And I think that's what like Canvas did, right? So Canvas basically, they had a successful Kickstarter, don't get me wrong, but then they're like, oh yeah, okay, we're successful. And it's easy because they could just release more pictures. Canvas is a game where you're basically laying these like see-through elements on top of each other to make a painting. But basically they're like, oh, we could just release this extra expansion and then re-kickstart it to kind of do their second print. It kind of funds their second printing of the game.
Yeah.
So it's smart. And like, Cartographers kind of did it also, even though Cartographers is kind of, well, I guess the company who makes it isn't huge, but they did it to kind of get more people to support it. right? So my thoughts is like, yeah, it's needed to kind of like get it back on your table, get more interest in it, sell more of the original copy, right? And then you said it. Yeah, I totally agree with this conclusion that it is sometimes necessary to keep the story rolling when you have a game that relies on story. So there you go. There's our conclusions for that. That's very, very good. Very good points.
Cool.
So how much is too much?
Oh, so I was looking today, kind of trying to get like an answer as to like what's too much, and man, there's just some things that just have a lot. So you're looking at Carsicone is like 59 and counting.
59, what? No.
Lord of the Rings.
Carsicone doesn't have 59 expansions. There's no way. Does it?
Man, look at it. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just looking at what people are saying on this thread here. And you have Kingdom Death has 28, not including the 16 expansions on their way from Kickstarter. Munchkin has 139.
I don't know. Munchkin has a lot of standalone games, right?
So yeah, like what's too much?
Well, I don't know. I think in my mind, too much is when people stop buying. You're producing expansions, people aren't buying. I think that's when you need to. You're like, okay, that's too much, right?
Right.
I also think they could, instead of making expansions, they could just reprint a game with extra expansions already in it.
Okay.
Or like a deluxe edition, so that gets out there more than like, oh, I got to go buy this expansion or whatever. Maybe you, instead of making expansions, you just kind of make better pieces, right? Make more expensive versions of the game.
Yeah.
That's my thought. But I will say that you're naming all these things with large number of expansions. Magic has the most probably expansions ever. The game is based on expansions, right?
Right.
In fact, just think of it, like they use it to they retheme old cards in it. They use like a thing in math called combinatorics to kind of just rebalance the cards, and then their rare cards are just slightly better than their like normal cards using like a formula. And then when you have too many cards, you just kind of have this thing called a bracket and you rotate out sets.
Nice.
Right? But I guess you can't really do that for like Carcassonne. Right? You can't really rotate. I guess you could just not play sets.
Yeah.
Here's the other thing. When a game runs out of mechanics, right? So is the game, so you gotta think about it, is the game set up to have infinite amount of mechanics, and can it run out of them, right? So like Magic is a great example that like, will it ever run out of mechanics? I don't know. It's set up to have unlimited amount of mechanics, but I'm sure there's a limit on it. I'm sure at some point they'll be like, okay, we can't make this game anymore. We've made every card.
Every card ever.
Right. But the game is made so that they can add rules.
Right.
But like in a game like, I don't know, Catan, for instance, I feel like you could run out of ways because your system is kind of structured in a way that you can't add too many things. If that makes sense.
Right. I agree. Yeah, I don't know. Like I'm not one to buy all the expansions to stuff.
Okay.
I think like I bought the expansions for Everdell because that game sort of just like meant something to me, but like I'm not a type of person that just goes out and buys expansions, so it's a tough sell for me. So that's why like I think it really just it needs to add so much to the game for me to make that extra purchase when I could just spend that money on like a different board game. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. And I agree with that 100% too. I was pretty happy with just getting the Marvel Champions living card game base set. And then finally there was an expansion that came out where I'm like, oh, I really like the idea behind that. Guardians of the Galaxy, right? So I'm like, oh, I'll buy into that. But they also released one with the Red Skull, and I'm like, I don't care. And then they released other decks, and you're like, some of those decks look cool, but I'm not going to buy it right now. Maybe I'll buy it when there's an expansion that I want to play with it,
Right.
Guardians of the Galaxy. Which our Twitter friends are repping pretty hard. So I'm like, oh, man, they really...
Yeah, I've seen that all over,
I'm like, okay. So it's sitting on my shelf right now, but basically I'm finishing up the Arkham Horror arc, Path to Carcosa arc. I'm almost done that. I'm on the last scenario. So once I'm done that, then I'll hit up Marvel Champions again.
Awesome.
So I guess on that note, for a non-collectible game, like we're just talking about it, I feel like a lot of those games are not set up for unlimited amount of expansions. Maybe an expansion might be needed to just kind of solidify the game. Mm-hmm. So maybe one is good, but I don't know if you need like 10 or something, and I think what also bothers me is when there's an expansion that is like 5 expansions. Like they could have been it could have been one. They could have sold it for $50, but instead they're like, oh, we'll release all 5 for like $30, right? And make more money.
Yeah.
I think that aggravates me.
Yeah.
So I maybe I don't like the Pro Book. Maybe I do like a Twilight Imperium expansion where they're like, oh, you know what? It's another $150, which is just as expensive as the regular game, but you're getting a ton of things, right?
Right.
Well, I don't know. Do we conclude how much is too much? What was our conclusion of that?
I mean, yeah, I guess till you stop buying is probably like a good, or get bored, I think it's a good, it's not like a definitive number, but I mean, when people stop buying your game, then you should probably stop releasing, or maybe continue releasing expansions so people will buy your game again. I don't know. What's the answer?
Yeah, who's the marketing person?
What's the
Get
answer?
him on here.
Yeah, but I mean, it's weird to look at a shelf and see like 9-10 boxes of like the same game and be like, what the heck's all this? But I mean, I guess it's up to your own personal choice, especially if you're a completionist and getting all those expansions for the game because you just need to have it all. Mm-hmm. That's perfectly fine too. I think for me, the 5 expansions that Everdell has is enough, mainly because it's a lot of money that I've spent on Everdell.
Hopefully they end there. Will they continue? Who knows?
No. Yeah, the creator said that it's time to end the game and move on.
Yeah, he's made enough. He's printed enough money. And what about us? When are we going to run out of podcast topics?
I think we're already there.
Yep, I think we are too. I was thinking that last night. I'm like, oh man, I think we're running out.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool.
Sad day. It's because we're in lockdown, man. We can't feed off each other.
True. Yeah. You know what we'll do? Tough. We'll just like podcast the news or something. Yeah.
Breaking news.
Nothing's happening.
Water. Wet.
Breaking news. I haven't left my house in a year.
Yes. All right. If you like what you hear, don't forget to follow us on your favorite streaming platform or leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. You can check us out on Instagram at FridayNightGames_official, Twitter at FridayNightGMS, on TikTok at Friday Night Games, and search for us on YouTube. If there is a game that you would like us to check out, or if you have a game that you'd like for us to preview, send us an email at info@FridayNight.games. Until then, I'm Jon.
And I'm Matt.
And it's Friday night, so let's have some fun.